Live.
I am Old New Dude, survived the 4th of July with my co-host.
Richard York, Asher's trueborn son, and I'm here with all 10 fingers, so, we're doing good.
Yeah, I've seen some videos on there, especially that one that blew up there at the back of that car, had all the people in the front yard. Have you seen that one?
I don't think so.
If you go on Twitter, I think I had something on there. You might be able to find it. But, yeah, it was pretty dangerous. But Eddard 5, oh my goodness. I got to quit saying these things are short chapters because I'm going to say that on a Tyrion chapter, and I'm going to feel like I was trying to be funny, but I'm not. So I'm going to say this is not a whole lot of pages, but it's got a lot there.
Oh, yeah. There always is. Let's get to it.
It's pretty good. Go ahead.
Lord Aaron's death was a great sadness for all of us, my lord, Grand Maester Pycelle said. I would be more than happy to tell you what I can of the manner of his passing. Do be seated. Would you care for refreshments? Some dates, perhaps? I have some very fine persimmons as well. Wine no longer agrees with my digestion, I fear, but I can offer you a cup of iced milk, sweetened with honey. I find it most refreshing in this heat. So Ned has come to the promised land of milk and honey here.
I read that last night and started laughing. My wife's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "It's Richard." She's like, "Never mind."
The small folks say that the last year of summer is always the hottest. It is not so, yet oftentimes it feels that way, does it not? So like Maester Aemon, Pycelle seems to realize that this is the last year of summer.
Yes.
Minds are like swords, I do fear. The old ones go to rust. Littlefinger is definitely not fooled by Pycelle's act, but we should look for evidence of whether Ned is fooled by Pycelle's act.
Well, do you get into it about the oversweet taste of the?
Yep.
Okay. All right. I'll wait till we get there.
Yeah. I think that's a clue, right? Yeah. He came to me one day asking after a certain book, as hale and healthy as ever, though it did seem to me that something was troubling him deeply. The next morning, he was twisted over in pain, too sick to rise from bed. So this is very smart timing by the true killer.
Yeah.
The true killer, I confess. Anyway. I have heard that you sent Maester Coleman away, the Grand Maester. The Grand Maester's nod was as slow and deliberate as a glacier. I did, and I fear the Lady Lysa will never forgive me that. So he's kind of icy at this point.
Yeah. He definitely goes through different You could see differences in Pycelle's entire demeanor, personality all the way through this conversation. Actually, Jeff. I get tripped on words every now and then.
No, I mean, it's interesting because it's both, right? It's his demeanor, but it's also just an act.
Yeah.
In the last stage of his fever, the hand called out the name Robert several times, but whether he was asking for his son or for the king, I could not say. Probably the king, but Preston Jacobs is a little less certain about that.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Preston. Preston's the one that John was looking up his bloodline and his strong blood and checking on whether or not Sweet Robin was his. Is that Preston's?
Yeah. That he might actually be meaning that the seed is strong is about Sweet Robin.
Right. Well, I mean, you got to stop and look at it. I mean, they even talk about how Maester Pycelle talks about his broad shoulders, and then House Tully, they have muscular men compared to House Stark. So you got two muscular households, and then boom, you got this little sick Sweet Robin.
Yeah. Well, he's definitely playing with the idea that an inheritance going by paternity is questionable, and paternity is always a little bit questionable, and so forth. So,
yeah, the only one you can guarantee is the mother.
I think he loves the idea that especially the oldest male or the oldest, or maybe the oldest female in the case of Dorne, it might not be like he plants little seeds that they might not really be who we think they are.
Right.
Just before he closed his eyes for the last time, he whispered something to the king and his lady wife, a blessing for his son. The seed is strong, he said. At the end, his speech was too slurred to comprehend. Death did not come until the next morning, but Lord John was at peace after that. He never spoke again. So him being at peace almost sounds like he thinks he communicated what he had to communicate, whether that was telling Robert, hey, your kids or whatever. But then I wonder if maybe he tried and Robert was just too blind, deliberately blind to what's going
we're
on.
told that Robert's there and laughing and joking with John before he passes, trying to get his spirits up. So I mean, there's ample opportunity.
Yeah, that's part
John
of why it's a little weird, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, there should be ample opportunity for him to say something to King Robert, and this is where it leans a little bit more towards the Preston Jacobs.
Right.
This is his own household. He has, I mean,
yeah. And if it was Robert, then it feels like the whole concept of him being at peace and so forth. Maybe he didn't really. Although then again, if his words were blurred, he may have still been trying to communicate. So it's a little bit mixed there.
Yeah, it seeds either way, as far as I can tell.
Yeah. Ned took another swallow of milk, trying not to gag on the sweetness of it. So yeah, I do think this is hinting that Ned sees Pycelle as a flatterer rather than a fool. That he's entirely too sweet.
Oh yeah.
Right? He's being fed this sweetness and is not agreeing with
this. I mean, this goes straight to what we've been saying ever since we started this reread of this book, that Ned is a whole lot smarter than people give him credit for.
Right. I'll mention the problem with Robert and his hands here in a little bit here.
Okay.
Unnatural, the aged maester's voice was thin as a whisper. No, I could not say so. Sad for a certainty. Yet in its own way, death is the most natural thing of all. So death being natural reminds me of the unnatural others and how they're preventing death from its natural course.
Yeah.
And thin as a whisper kind of reminds me of the blade from the prologue, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like this might be some references here, kind of reminders that death is the natural and it's unnatural to have the resurrection and the zombies and so forth.
Yeah.
I just had to include this for obvious reasons. For a few short months under Jaehaerys' father, Aegon the Fortunate, the fifth of his name, he served under Egg.
Chances are he was a pretty decent guy back then, though.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I doubt he was completely undermining the regime to help the Lannisters the way he's always been since then here.
Now, do you think that he is of Lannister blood or from the Westerlands, or he saw Tywin Lannister be the hand of the king for 20 years and went like, that's what should be ruling, is that man right there?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I think it's weird that there's never any hints given as to what his lineage is, which makes me kind of think he might have some Lannister blood.
Okay.
What's your thought?
What color are his eyes?
I don't know.
I'll look at that when we get done.
Yeah. If an old man may be forgiven his blunt speech, let me say that grief can derange even the strongest and most disciplined of minds, and the Lady Lysa was never that. Since her last stillbirth, she's seen enemies in every shadow. There's definitely some truth in there.
Yeah.
Poison, Ned suggested quietly. Pycelle's sleepy eyes flicked open. The aged maester shifted uncomfortably in his seat. A disturbing thought. We are not the free cities where such things are common. Grand Maester Aethelmer wrote that all men carry murder in their hearts, yet even so, the poisoner is beneath contempt. He fell silent for a moment, his eyes lost in thought. What you suggest is possible, my lord. So Pycelle later implies to Tyrion that he may have sort of sped these things along, or at least prevented Coleman from saving Jon Arryn.
From purging the poison out from him, yeah.
Right. So I've often wondered if it's more than Lysa and Pycelle who are trying to kill Jon Arryn. So a whole lot of people would not want Robert to discover the truth.
Right.
And I think, and maybe if that's the case, we might be about to get a clue here. I've heard it said that poison is a woman's weapon. Pycelle stroked his beard thoughtfully. It is said, women, cravens, and eunuchs. So maybe Pycelle's the craven, and Lysa and Varys were both poisoning Jon Arryn. I don't think that's really the case, but it's kind of fun.
Yeah, this is true. Well, I mean, that whole paragraph there, you got the sleepy-eyed, slow, and deliberate and patient Pycelle. All of a sudden, he's alert. He's looking around. He's pausing for a moment. Uncomfortable. You see a pause in a moment of thought, and then he comes back, and that whole thing was to point it toward the eunuch, to get it away from a woman.
Right.
If Pycelle knew that Lysa was the one that gave the poison.
Well, I think he suspected Cersei. He basically tells Tyrion that he knew Cersei must be the one that would want him dead, and must have at least ordered his poisoning or something, right? So
yeah.
So he came to the conclusion that Cersei wanted him dead, and because he is a Lannister toady, he then tried to speed it along.
Yeah.
Above them, a raven cawed loudly in the rookery. Is Bran watching?
I love it. Anytime there's a bird in this thing.
There was something about Varys that made his flesh crawl. So we've talked about this before, how Ned hates Varys. He tells us right away that he's the one counselor he doesn't like, and we've speculated that it could just be based upon the nature of his business that he's dishonorable, and Ned doesn't value that. But it could also be that Ned has had business with Varys in particular, right?
Right. Hey, getting back to that crow, just to throw it out there with your quantum leap stuff, could somebody be planting the path that this conversation's going, or just watching it?
Yeah, I don't know. It is kind of strange to me that Pycelle is gives so much information.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe part of that is because Ned is the hand of the king, and Pycelle's not really the guilty party. So maybe some of it's just him trying to do his duty as much as he can.
Right. Well, I mean, I know every good lie has a bit of truth in it, but he didn't have to tell him that Jon Arryn was looking at a book full of lineages.
Yeah, and he gives him the book. He makes an excuse that I'll have to find it, but then he gives it to him.
Right, but I mean, he says, let me see if I can find it, and then I'll have it sent to you. What he's going to do is he's going to flip through that book real quick and make sure Jon Arryn didn't put anything in there.
He didn't
have to tell him about that book at all, but he did.
Yeah. Yeah, it feels like he definitely could have done more of a cover-up than he does.
Right.
I hope I have helped. Oh, wait, did we skip the... Oh, no, it's not there yet. Okay. I hope I have helped in some small way to put your mind at ease. And he's telling the truth that he hopes that.
Right.
He may be deceiving him somewhat, but he's telling the truth about that. She and the children were making the journey to Casterly Rock. So Cersei does have an alibi, which is why it would make more sense if he thought she'd given an order to poison rather than actually poison. So it's not much of an alibi because she's the queen and she probably wouldn't really get her hands dirty.
Right. I mean, well, him knowing the truth about the children, and if he takes what Jon says about the strong seed and all that kind of stuff, or even thinking that Jon found out about the true parentage of the children, then he would think that helping them to die would be helping Cersei and House Lannister.
And part of the reason why I think Preston is wrong is we know from Stannis that he really did go to Jon Arryn, right? So Jon Arryn actually he was aware and was probably trying to build the case. So I mean, it makes the most sense that he's trying to build the case. Now whether he was also wondering about his own son is another question. Well,
I mean, in the looking for the evidence of Cersei's children, if it didn't big old light bulb on top of his head go, wait a minute, all of my household from here back 1,000 years were all blonde-headed or whatever color it is.
And I've never gotten anybody pregnant and so forth, right?
Yep.
I am here to serve. Yes, Ned thought as the door swung shut. But whom? And we know that he's really serving Tywin, right?
Yeah. But you still got Ned going. He's smart enough to know that this guy's double dealing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. He's right away. He's like, yeah, but are you really serving me? Right? He doesn't really believe he's serving him.
Yeah.
Sirio says a water dancer can stand on one toe for hours. Her hands flailed at the air to steady herself. Ned had to smile. Which toe? He teased. Any toe, Arya said, exasperated with the question. I just find that exchange cute.
Yeah. Well, I mean, any conversation that Arya's having is usually one of those cute, funny kind of just conversations.
Sirio says a water dancer never falls. She lowered her leg to stand on 2 feet. Father, will Bran come and live with us now? Never, never, never. So my point is, she's talking about never falls, right? And then immediately mentions Bran, and it kind of harkens back to Bran thinking never, never, never.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Sirio says a water dancer never falls. Would that mean a water dancer never falls and is a possible green seer? And I mean, I know he gets the job for being able to see past the glamour, but I don't know.
Well, I think that is definitely tying the two together, right? He's tying together Arya and her becoming a water dancer and learning to never fall with Bran and how he never falls, but he actually fell, right? But he didn't really fall, he was thrown, and that's part of the point.
Yeah.
The night the bird had come from Winterfell, Eddard Stark had taken the girls to the castle Godswood, an acre of elm and alder and black cottonwood overlooking the river. The heart tree there was a great oak. So the bird coming from Winterfell, it kind of almost makes this raven sound like the three-eyed crow to me. You know, the night the bird had come from Winterfell.
Right.
Something about that expression that just kind of screams three-eyed crow to me.
Yeah.
And then we get, I dreamed of Bran, Sansa whispered to him. I saw him smiling. And so I'm wondering if this is supposed to tell us, you know, that things are going to work out pretty well for Bran. In fact, he actually winds up much higher than where Ned is like, oh, he could be High Septon or counselor to a king. Of course, the next step above that is the actual king. And so maybe this is hinting that they're not even, Bran's future is not even is even above that very top level that Ned is thinking he could achieve.
Yeah. Did you see on Twitter yesterday or the day before with Austin Flowers talking about oak trees being ancient weirwood?
Yeah, I commented on it. I said I think the oak tree, and this is here too, right? I think the oak tree. I think part of the reason for that is that the weirwood is supposed to represent Asherah, and the term Dione or Alat actually means the oak tree in addition to meaning the wife of God. So yeah, I commented on that.
Yeah, well, I was just thinking that. I mean, if it starts out as an oak tree, is there since everybody's calling it the weirwood net, is there a weirwood virus that takes over an oak tree that turns it into a weirwood? I mean, because we know down the road that weirwood's going to turn to stone. Is it just a process, and the actual weirwoods themselves are an invasive species like the ghost grass over in Essos? Does that make any sense?
Yeah, and have you ever heard the essay of All Hail the Night Queen? And there's a really good version of her theory by is it Amy Blackfire? Is that the name of the YouTuber? I can't remember if that's her name. I'll try and find it. But there's but basically her theory is that the Hammer of the Waters, the whole point of that was actually to sever the arm of Dorne because the weirwood was being corrupted into the shade of the evening. And so you've got the weirwood that's not corrupted in the west and the weirwood that is corrupted in the east. So you've got the, and ebony is just a term for a generic term for any black wood.
Right.
Black wood, right? So when we see anywhere we see ebony and weirwood, we're probably seeing the corrupted shade of the evening tree mixed with the weirwood, right?
Right. Well, I mean, is the arm of Dorne destroyed to stop the shade of the evening to come to Westeros, or was it destroyed to keep the weirwoods from coming to Essos?
Her theory is that the whole thing was, spanned what was one continent then before it was broken up, right?
Right.
And that it was it was severed to prevent the corruption. That the corruption is the shade of the evening.
Yeah, but when it comes to George and him, the traditional trope that the bad guys wear black and the good guys wear white, and he wanted to just stand that trope on top of his head, kind of thing, change things up. You remember that? Hearing him say anything like that?
Yeah, I mean that's the whole concept of the Night's Watch, right?
Right. So I mean, but here's the thing: is when that expression was put out there, we're automatically thinking, okay, it's going to be the opposite. So the Night's Watch are the good guys, and the White Walkers are the bad guys. But what if he didn't switch? He didn't switch it, and the Night's Watch are actually the bad guys, and they don't know it. And the White Walkers are the good guys.
A clue to that might be the Starks being white, right? The whole concept that the Stark color is really white, or white and gray. And of course, the reason the name Stark kind of implies the whole black and white view and so forth too, right?
Yeah. Sorry, I got us off topic.
No, that's all right. But he will never run beside his wolf again, he thought with a sadness too deep for words, or lie with a woman, or hold his own son in his arms. Well, he will run inside his wolf.
Yeah.
Can I be a king's counselor and build castles and become the High Septon? Arya would make a really good counselor, but she might not be the best choice for High Septon.
Now, that paragraph before that sentence, you got Ned talking about the things that Bran could possibly do.
Right.
And then Brandon the Builder and all. I mean,
sure.
Are some of the things that are mentioned in this paragraph, are they related to any other Brandon Stark besides Bran the Builder, as far as the ships and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I don't know if we know anything about a High Septon. Right? The rest of it, I mean, given the number of Bran Starks, and it seems likely that they've done most of these things, High Septon seems a little weird for, until Ned's kids, they weren't really interested in the Seven, right? But Ned's kids obviously could be Ned's kids, in particular, being eligible to be High Septon kind of makes sense. But it feels like the Starks before Ned marrying, a great lord of the Seven.
I don't know, just kind of as soon as he said Brandon the Builder, normally we hear Bran the Builder, and I'm like, well, is he naming off all that stuff?
And then that automatically leads to the thought, well, is he talking about somebody else? Is there some other Bran Stark that's been?
Or is Bran all the Brandons?
Well, and I think that part of the concept, of course, if Bran is actually God the Father symbolically, then he's above the High Septon in addition to being above the counselors, right? If he's the king, the High King, and basically the old gods, then he's above the High Septon and he's above the counselors.
Yeah.
If only old Selmy's mind were as nimble as his blade. So the Shave-Pate Skaha's Marine's little finger is glad that this is not the case. Promise or no promise, he could not find it in him to trust Lord Peter Baelish, who struck him as too clever by half. Good call, but unfortunately, Robert's hands are married to the Tully sisters, and they always make the one big mistake of listening to the Tully sisters and trusting Littlefinger.
Yeah. Hey, can we jump back to that the Godswood real quick?
Yeah, sure.
All right, they knelt before it, talking about the oak, to offer their thanksgiving as if it had been a weirwood. There's another reference to making the oak into a weirwood.
Right.
And then it goes, when dawn broke over the city, the dark red blooms of dragon's breath surrounded the girls where they lay. And I mean, I got the girls being surrounded by dragon's breath.
Yeah.
And then I dreamed of Bran.
Right.
Okay, you already said the special one. But yeah, the dragon's breath is just the being surrounded by it just kind of jumped out in my head.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I almost read that part. I was like, oh well, we gotta trim some things.
Well, you gotta leave some stuff for me too.
Sure. All right, we're pretty much at the end here, so let's do it.
Yeah.
Right. I am grateful for your help. Perhaps I was wrong to distrust you. Littlefinger fingered his small pointed beard. You are slow to learn, Lord Eddard. Distrusting me was the wisest thing you've done since you climbed down off your horse. I'd put no truer words.
Yep. I mean, Peter Baelish is a very interesting character, and you see a lot of different things with him when it comes to the story, and sometimes reading what he does is actually not comical, but I mean, it's engaging as far as you read it, but I still can't stand him.
It really does feel like Robert could have been very successful if not for the fact that his two trusted hands were married to the Tully sisters.
Yeah.
Like people are like, oh, the problem is that Robert was a negligent king. I'm like, well, but he knew that, right? So he picked a hand of the king who could run the kingdom for him, right?
Yeah.
So and really the only mistakes that either one of them make are that they trust Littlefinger.
Right. Well, I'll put it this way: if Liza Tully wasn't in the mix, I mean, granted, that's what got the army and all that kind of stuff. But if she wasn't there to be up Peter Baelish's hind end all the time, I mean, he wouldn't have had that hidden dagger.
Yeah, I mean, Robert doesn't. It's true. Robert doesn't win his throne without them, right? I mean,
right.
It's the double marriage that of the possibly doubly pregnant Tully sisters.
The Tullys started Robert's reign, and the Tully sisters ended Robert's reign.
Yeah.
But that's a good chapter.
Yeah, and our next chapter is the Sam chapter. I mean, it's actually a John chapter, but it's the introduction of Sam. It gives us the whole accent thing, the clue that Danny might actually be from Tyrosh, and that Corrin Halfhand is probably not who he claims to be.
Yeah.
And there's a whole lot else there too, of course. So it'll be fun.
Definitely. All right. Are you available Friday?
Yeah, I think Friday's good.
Okay. We're actually under 30 minutes today. We're doing good. Anybody leaving comments, we do appreciate it. Talking to people on Twitter is definitely cool. Shout out to Austin Flowers and what's the little brother that squeezed it, Valencar?
Yeah,
Valencar, yeah. They leave comments, so I do appreciate those. And we will see y'all Friday. I've been Old New Dude, and he's been
Richard York, Asher's True Born Son.
Y'all have a good one.